At first light, the trucks began to arrive. Chevy 4x4s, Dodge Rams with torn fender skirts rusted by years of parking, on wharves close by the sea, the odd Toyota Tacoma. Their beds were piled with nylon nets or stacked with plastic utility tubs, cab roofs encrusted with seagull shit. Some held oilskin gear and fish-scaled rubber boots. Others carried dozens of empty soda cans that rattled against each other as the trucks braked to a stop. Slowly, their occupants stepped out onto the wet surface of the tarmac, looking guardedly around on legs that were more accustomed to plunging decks. The men themselves unused to meeting in groups larger than 3 or 4 around a table at Mike's pastry shop. Most had never come near the boxy concrete and glass regional office of the National Marine Fisheries Service. They were more comfortable, as their wives complained, wearing a groove in the streets between their homes, the wharfs, where their boats were tied, in St. Peter's Club, where they gathered before and after trips. The younger fishermen drank at Mitch's, or the Old Timers Tavern, both within crawling distance of each other. Slowly they gathered in the same groups of 3 or 4, muttering to each other in Sicilian. What the heck are we doing here? How should I know? Then the younger men pulled up in late model cars or pickups with state-of-the-art caps. They stood off by themselves, smoking or sipping coffee from Dunkin' Donuts styrofoam cups, dressed in Red Sox ball caps and flannel shirts, even though it was a mild June morning. Though they were natives, many had never ventured up to the new industrial park, much less the vicinity of the fisheries office. That had been the job of the women, who had organized themselves as soon as the federal government had begun to restrict the men from fishing. The slowly rising sun revealed a parade of cars and trucks, some still covered with the early morning dew, steadily converging on the parking lot. As yet, there was little talk beyond the quiet banter in Sicilian, though once the women left their cars and a group of men began to unload a stack of placards from a big flatbed, voices rose on the morning tension in the air. Andiamo ragazzi, sbrigatevi. Let's go, guys, hurry up. Nina Calogero climbed up onto the bed of a pickup, shouting at the sluggishly gathering fishermen through a bullhorn. She was dressed in high heels and a purple pantsuit, her lips livened by a bright red lipstick. Get ready. The office workers will be coming any minute. Quickly, the signs were thrust up as the younger men warmed to the task of demonstrating. Fishermen feed the world, yet our families starve. You're killing us with regs. Let me fish, don't buy me out. If we can't work, why should you? No sooner had the men come together in 2 flanks, blocking the entrance to the office building, than the Boston TV satellite trucks pulled up. Crews emerged with shoulder-held camcorders, reporters with remote microphones descending on the crowd. What do you hope to achieve by shutting down these offices? A highly made-up blonde woman wearing a WBZ-TV windbreaker shouted out. But her question was blotted out as soon as Nina began speaking. Listen, everybody, I'm Nina Calogero, the president of Save Our Fishermen. We're here today to demonstrate our solidarity against government regulations that are starving our families. The men began to shout their support as the flanks of fishermen, young and old, closed round the entrance, making it impossible for any office staff to enter the building. A smaller group gathered at the rear entrance, effectively blocking that ingress as federal workers tried to enter. If we can't work, you guys ain't working either, the men shouted, pushing forward with their placards. We got to get to work, one of the receptionists shouted back. The switchboards will be lighting up. Hey, you're only losing one morning, a youthful fisherman answered. How do you think it feels to be out of work every day? I want the government to hear us, Nina shouted through the bullhorn. First, you increased the mesh width on us so we couldn't catch our usual size cod and haddock. Then you started closing the grounds down, telling us where we could fish and where we couldn't. If that wasn't bad enough, You cut us down to 139 days at sea. Then it was 88 days. Next, you tell us how much we can catch, and you set the inspectors on us. If we overfish by a couple of pounds, you make us dump the catch, and you fine us. You call that conservation? How's a family going to live on 88 work days a year? You people here work 5 days a week, 52 weeks a year. And if we get bad weather on any one of them days we're allowed to fish, we don't work. Nina shouted as the TV camera crews crowded in around the truck she spoke from. When we ask for relief, you set up a program to buy us out, she continued forcefully. So what are we going to do once we don't have a boat to fish? Where's a man going to turn whose whole life is fishing? You're going to give him an office job? And what's his family going to do once the boat is gone? Nina lowered the bullhorn when some of the men began gesturing toward a fleet of black and green police vans as federal marshals arrived. Soon, the group of uniformed men, armed with police batons and rifles, moved toward the fishermen who blocked the entrance. What are they saying? Nina shouted down to the men close to the truck. Can you hear? They're telling the guys this is government property. They got to disperse. Government property? Nina raised her bullhorn again. This is our property, too. We're the government, and you guys all work for us. What do you mean disperse? How can you tell us to leave what belongs to the people? The fishermen stood firm. Stay right here, Nina shouted. If they're going to arrest you, let them do it. Let the world see how they take our jobs away from us, and then they put us in jail when we object. Mrs. Calogero, a reporter shouted up to Nina. How long will you resist? We're going to stay right here, Nina shot back. Since federal regulations keep the fishermen from the sea, the fishermen will prevent the federal workers from going to their jobs. If they want to arrest good tax-paying American citizens, let them do it. Let the television viewers see how the country our fathers and mothers came to for freedom treats us. They take away our livelihood. Then they want to buy us out. Now they're going to arrest us. Fine, let it happen. The camera panned from Nina to the men and women holding signs and placards. Slowly, the protesters were surrounded by the federal marshals and state police, who arrived with blaring sirens. Members of the environmental police joined the marshals, while at the edges of the parking lot stood several patrol cars from the Gloucester Police Department, as officers formed a barrier which would keep the protesters from leaving. It looks like surrounded, another reporter shouted up to Nina. What will you do now? We're going to do what we came here to do, Nina answered calmly. We're going to stay here until they take us all away. Law enforcement says you're trespassing on federal property, the reporter pressed. Since when was it a crime to stand on the land we all own together, Nina answered. When was it a crime to speak out against injustice? Hey, the black people have been doing it for years. Now the fishermen are going to raise their voices. They arrested the blacks and they doused them with fire hoses. Let them do it to us now. The cameras began to catch the first arrests, as the fishermen who blocked the entrance to the office building were briskly separated from each other and led away. They filmed the faces of the workers, secretaries, receptionists, managers, staff attorneys, as they gathered apprehensively behind the police cordons. Once the entrance had been cleared, the office workers were accompanied to the cleared glass-doored entrance. They were shown streaming in. The National Marine Fisheries can't understand why you're demonstrating, a reporter called to Nina. They claim to be your friends and advocates. They want to know why you would want to turn against them. We're not turning against anybody, Nina answered, jumping down from the back of the truck, perspiration streaming down her face, her eyeshadow blurred. We had to make a show of solidarity, she continued. We had to let people know we're hurting. It didn't do any good to talk to our senators. They told us they cared about the fishermen, but they said we had to protect the oceans from overfishing. The fishermen are stuck in the middle. The public perception is that you're at fault, the reporter pressed. People believe you've taken more from the sea than the sea can replenish. Let them talk to the Russians, Nina said. We never had factory ships like the Soviets sneaking into our waters, taking on millions of pounds, their high-tech trawlers sucked up from the bottom of the sea and processing it right on the spot. All we tried to do was keep our boats working and feed our families. One family, one boat. Is that a crime? Two state police in blue and gray uniforms and black troopers' hats approached Nina. Mrs. Calogero, we understand you are the organizer of this demonstration. Please come with us. The crowd began to break up as Nina was led off. Gathering up the placards, those who remained loaded them back onto the flatbed as police patrolled the parking lot. accompanying the last of the workers into the office building. Fishermen who hadn't been arrested talked in groups until they too were dispersed by the police and ordered to leave the area. In a matter of minutes, the only vehicles in the parking lot belonged to the federal employees who had begun their day's work in a lockdown building. Okay, that's enough. Thank you. Yes.
What's the time frame in which the story is set?
The story is set in the summer of 1993. And the reason I said it in 1993, first of all, I really have, even though you hear a lot of local references and things that you'll be familiar with, I've quite fictionalized the story of the fight over Gloucester Landing for dramatic purposes. But I moved the mall story to 1993 because during the mid-'80s, we really began to see a problem with the fishing stocks, and the crisis in the fishing industry began to grow. And so what I thought, by 1993, the government regulations were in full force, and the pressure was on the fishermen. And I thought to gain the most kind of dramatic possibility from the story and the atmosphere I was trying to create, I would take the story of the crisis in the fishing industry and pair it with the battle over the mall and bring them together. I want to tell the story about the pressures on a city like Gloucester. We have had dramatic incidents, shopping mall, Gloucester Crossing, a number of different kinds of situations in Gloucester. But I wanted in some way to try to step back and try to give a picture of a city struggling with its identity, a city struggling to find out where it wants to go. Given the fact that we do have a necessity to grow in some ways, some significant ways, and change is always a part of growth. So I thought that, and I also wanted to tell this story from diverse points of view. I didn't have a chance to read that tonight, but I wanted to tell the story from inside the developer's mind. I wanted to tell the story from inside the opponent's mind. I wanted to tell the story from inside the minds of people who are ambivalent. Laurie is a major character in the book, and a great deal of the book happens inside the offices of the Gloucester Daily Times. I want to show the inside of a newspaper. I want to show the workings of a newspaper. I worked at the Gloucester Times years ago, and so I've used some of that experience. But I wanted, Laurie, for example, is ambivalent. And I wanted to have a character ambivalent about the fishing industry. Laurie is the daughter of a fisherman who was abusive, who was an alcoholic, and I wanted to show that view of Gloucester. There are many people who feel they have been hurt by various aspects of the fishing industry. I wanted to show a view of people inside the industry at that time who were worried about their livelihood. I wanted to show the point of view of people who care about the economic well-being of the city. I wanted to show it from the point of view of people who were looking at planning issues, who were looking at aesthetic issues. I tried to tell the story from every possible point of view that I could, because I felt it was necessary to do that. And what I really try to show in the book, the most important thing I want to show in the book, is the importance of community. This book, it's sort of what I've learned about living in Gloucester all my life. Okay, that's enough. Thank you. Thank you very much.